President Donald Trump of the United States has caused furor throughout the world by his program of trade tariffs.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. A tariff or
Tariffs.
This is a direct attack.
Donald Trump, who changes his mind between, breakfast 11's his lunch and supper time.
In a cabinet meeting, President Trump acknowledged that due to his tariffs, this Christmas, children might only get 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls.
The woke left say the tariffs would hurt me more than they hurt you, and then I blinked. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. That's why I'm signing this. This executive order, the I did not lose, but I totally won the trade war order.
Sounds perfectly legitimate. He's the President of the United States, and he wants to act in a way that is for the benefit of the people of America. And it's also perfectly legitimate for a government to have tariffs on trade. After all, if there is to be trade, there has to be infrastructure, there has to be ports and roads and systems with administrators checking the goods that are coming in. You have to check for contraband and so many things. Infrastructure is required. So tariffs are required. Government's required to raise funds, not only for infrastructure, but for administration and response to emergencies. They require to have armies and so on and so on and so on. So it's perfectly legitimate to have tariffs, but what we're looking at here is what is called a trade war, with the idea that goods are being produced in other countries very cheaply, and they're being sold in America, and that puts the American manufacturing sector at a disadvantage. All kinds of goods are imported into America, and the money goes out of America, and in the meantime, people in America, there could be more jobs in manufacturing of all kinds of things, from cars and ships to needles, books, all kinds of things are imported. So the idea of putting tariffs is to protect and boost America's economy, with the idea that, well, let's put the American people first, not put them at a disadvantage as it is at present. Although interestingly, previously, for many years, the United States of America was pushing the idea of free trade. The British, when they were dominant in the world, and later Americans especially, were promoting free trade because it was advantageous to themselves at the time. Now that it's not advantageous, they want to make a 180-degree turn and institute tariffs. Well, sounds like a good idea to put America first if you're the President of the United States of America. Seems to make sense, at least face value. Another possibility is that the leaders of the world could come together and work out between them how to act for the good of the whole human society. That all the nations can cooperate in such a way that everyone is benefited in the best possible way. Maybe that was the idea behind the so-called United Nations, which seem to be ever more disunited. It's supposed to be United Nations, but since the United Nations was founded, there are more and more nations, because nations are splitting up and becoming disunited, most famously with the breakdown of the USSR.
America elected Donald Trump to run the country like a business, but it turns out he's running it like one of his businesses. I love that you can intentionally ruin the economy and still get to stay president. It's like if you drunk drove your car through the window of the DMV and they were like, license renewed. It's insane. This was the worst week for the stock market since the summer of 2020. But you have to remember, back then, the president was also Trump. Just in the past 2 days, investors have lost over $6 trillion. Money is leaving the stock market faster than Morgan Wallen at goodnight.
Why can't all the leaders get together and work for the benefit of the whole world? Economically, socially, in terms of climate management, health-wise, Why does everything have to run on the idea that the main duty of the leader of each country is to bolster the economy of that country? What's going on here? If we examine, it's something like the mentality, territorial mentality of lower species, animals and birds. Certain animals, they get together in groups, and as a group they protect each other's interest. They protect the interest of the group against other groups. And we see that in human society also. There are nations, and then there are groups of nations, just like NATO is one group of nations, which are united with one purpose. The only function of NATO at the present time seems to be combating the perceived threat of Russia. It seems to be the main purpose. But it's practically an animalistic tendency. Our group, I have to protect my group. This idea of America first.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
It's all based on a misunderstanding of who we are and what is the purpose of life. You may be an American today, but tomorrow where will you be? Well, the atheist will say, well, we'll all be dead, and there's nothing after that. Well, in that case, why bother so much about what's going on with all the rest of the Americans? Why bother about anything if everything is finished at death? And if you believe in God, and then our main purpose in life should be to glorify God and to live in such a way that we can go to God. And trying to make one nation, our nation, what we see as our nation, as the best nation, or protect our nation, that may be there to some extent, but overemphasis on this obscures the perspective of understanding that there is God, and should be, proper understanding should be that he doesn't favor any nation or any people over any others. Of course, there are religions which claim themselves to be the chosen people, and there are ideas of American exceptionalism, just as previously there was the idea of British exceptionalism, and prior to that there was Roman exceptionalism, and so on and so on. But so much emphasis on America first or Greenland first. We should understand, I'm not American, I'm not British, I'm not this body. Living as if we are sophisticated animals by trying to push our group up and push others down is going to lead us to the animalistic mentality by which in our next life we will get the body of an animal suitable to our consciousness, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Yang yang vapi smaran bhavam tyajante kalevaram tang tame vaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Our consciousness at death, which is shaped by our consciousness throughout life, determines the kind of body we will get in our next life. So if we're in the consciousness of a dog, this is my area, don't get out of here, go away. I belong here, you don't. This kind of consciousness, doggish consciousness, leads us to take birth as a dog. We get what we deserve, or we get what we desire. So tariffs as a trade war is part of the whole mess that the world is in due to the animalistic consciousness of thinking, I am this body, I belong to a certain nation, we should act for the benefit of our nation, instead of understanding that human life is meant for God realization, and that we should all, the whole human race, should cooperate on the platform of understanding that human life is meant for God realization. Obviously, human society at the present time is a long, long way away from such an understanding, but that is the lack of this understanding is the root cause of all the immense problems that face the world at the present time. Misunderstanding of the purpose of human life. We have a spiritual purpose, to understand that we are spiritual beings, that we are all servants of God, and to cultivate that consciousness. And the whole human society should be organized on that basis in order to promote this consciousness, God consciousness, within human society. So this Krishna consciousness movement is meant for re-establishing actual God consciousness in human society. Actual God consciousness doesn't mean based on blind faith, blind dogma, but based on the scientific knowledge of the difference between the soul and the body, the scientific knowledge of how the soul goes from one body to another, to another, to another, according to his consciousness and his activities, his karma, according to the understanding of who actually is God, what is his nature, what is our relationship with him. All this knowledge is given in Bhagavad Gita and elaborately in Srimad Bhagavatam. These books are available with extensive commentary for the overall uplift of human society, which is now caught up in trade wars. Previously there was a Cold War. Looks like the world is getting ready for another major hot war. There are all kinds of little hot wars going on all over the place. All this is unnecessary, symptomatic of the ignorance of not only the leaders of society, but the whole society. This Krishna consciousness movement is meant for bringing about a benign revolution based on knowledge of the actual purpose of life and uplifting us from animalistic consciousness, which will only lead us to act as animals fighting either trade war or atomic nuclear war or whatever.